I want to learn about the Finnish housing system. Um, does it promote equality? Also, can you provide me with a video link, preferably YouTube, that dives deeper into this issue? Okay. Works especially. Okay, building a society. 30. Oh. That's rough. How much I talk is gonna be forever. Explores the National Housing First strategy, how housing policy has shifted from temporary shelters to permanent homes, and why that matters for you. I mean, this is something I'm going to be talking about the Canadian housing market endlessly. Endlessly. So let's.
You're listening.
I might not get through it all today. But if I've gotta finish it tomorrow.
On the Way Home with your host, Emmy Kelly.
Welcome to On the Way Home. I'm your host, Emmy Kelly, and this is the podcast where we explore the solutions, stories, and people working to end homelessness across Canada and around the world.
I mean, that sounds good. She's going to relate it back to Canada, even. Let's go. Okay, I'm in.
Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Juha Kahila, Head of International Affairs of Finland's Y Foundation, an organization at the heart of Finland's global leadership in ending homelessness. Today, we will be hearing from Juha about how he is working to shape international collaboration and also a unique perspective on what it truly takes to build a society that works for everyone. Let's jump in. Hey, Juha, thank you so much for joining us today on the way home.
Hey, it's my pleasure and thanks for the invitation.
We'll start with our signature question and ask you, what does home mean to you?
Well, it's a safe place for sure, a foundation for everything else in my life and a place where I can, just be myself with my family and forget everything else.
Would you start off, Juha, by telling us a little bit about yourself, your passion, what brought you into this space, where your passion for housing and homelessness and your interest is coming from?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have been working in the field of homelessness and housing for the past 16 years, more or less. But before that, I was working at the child protection and then working with young people. And I think somewhere during those years, I found a passion to especially work with young homeless people. Because in the child protection, I could see quite many young people leaving the care, ending up being homeless. And I think that's something that I would like to work on, that how we could make sure that when people are leaving from care, that they don't end up on the streets or shelter or in a temporary accommodation.
That just sounds nice.
So from the child protection, I moved to work at the Youth Housing Association services. So I have been a support worker for quite many years in my past, and that's something that I'm not too sure that how many people actually know that I have been doing the support work, and I'm really proud of that part of my work career. And then from there I started working as a support worker for young homeless people, and then after a while developing the services at the same NGO, and then working together on the National Housing First network, participating in trainings and get to know people and so forth. So I think little by little the passion to work towards ending homelessness grew on me as well from as the years went by. And then so I think that was the starting point, and since then, 2010, my passion has been to end youth homelessness, and like I said, when the years went by, to end all homelessness, and that has carried my vision and my perspective on things until today. And of course, at the moment, I'm really happy that I'm working at the Y Foundation as the head of the international affairs. And then before this role, I was working at the Y Foundation as well, but leading the National Housing First Network, which is a really important network bringing all the key stakeholders together in Finland and then developing the work together towards the ending homelessness goal.
I want to hear more. I think our listeners would love to hear more too about the network and those different pieces. So if you can keep those in mind for us, we'd love to come back and understand more about that. Finland is recognized as a global leader in ending homelessness. Can you walk us through how the country transitioned from emergency response system to a housing first approach?
Yeah, it hasn't been a magic trick and it didn't happen overnight. So I think we need to roll back to 1980s when we had around 20,000 homeless people, more or less, and a lot of people.
1980s. So they've been at this for a long time. Do I have the housing prices? I do. Give me 5. Here we go. So housing prices in Canada continued a slight decline since the pandemic. We had a pandemic peak because money was like free, and drop, a little bump, and now you got a slow. They try and get housing back down to something. I mean, I think I still got a long way to go, but the housing prices are coming down, at least national.
Especially people sleeping on the streets. Unfortunately, some of them died on the streets as well because we didn't have.
I mean, like, Finland's cold, Canada's cold. Living on the streets is miserable. Miserable. You quite literally deadly.
Enough shelter beds for everyone and so forth. And I think during the 80s, we started to realize that maybe homelessness, it's not a fault of the individuals, but maybe there is something wrong in our systems. And then in the 80s, there was a big social welfare act that we put.
I mean, it can be both. It can be an issue with the system, but it can also be an issue with people. To end homelessness, you are going to have to give people homes fundamentally cannot afford. It's the only way. You're going to have citizens who not make enough money to afford their own. What do? Leave them on the street and have them die in winters? Or do you construct a system to put them into home? And the housing first policy. Right now, we don't have anything. You can't afford a place to live. You're on your street. It's a completely free market, right? And the cost of housing is controlled by the free market. I personally think there should be regulation in this sector, because not having a home can be fatal. Specifically in Canada, not having a home very easily lead to a death spiral, and we want to avoid that.
Together, which also have something around housing and housing services. So I think that was the starting point, and of course the Y Foundation was also founded in 1985 with the sole purpose of acquiring homes for homeless people. And then I think we can move to 1990s.
They just bought homes and put home. What is their system? This is what I want to know, and it doesn't sound like they're gonna talk about how the Finnish housing system promotes equality. Okay, I can see it all. Perfect. Finland has a long-standing tradition of providing affordable social housing alongside private housing. So they provide social housing alongside private housing. We only have the private housing. Affordable and state-sustained housing is mainly built and managed by municipal companies and a non-profit organization. I'm guessing that's like the Y First he was talking about. Backed by government subsidies and state guaranteed loans, the system aims to ensure that people with low incomes or special needs can access quality housing at a cost they can afford, which supports economic and social inclusion. Like in Canada, we do this with healthcare, right? We allow everyone to access quality healthcare. This is just doing that to housing with low incomes and special needs. Wonder like what kind of to get into that, which supports economic and social inclusion. But the other thing is, if you have social housing, you're taking a part of the demand for housing and you're taking it out of the private housing ecosystem. Those that can't afford it, but that it's still demand that you're taking out and putting another ecosystem. So that should keep the private housing system more affordable, because you don't have that extra demand driving it up. People that got low income or special needs have another choice. Okay, key features include rent based on need, not ability to pay. Allocation is prioritized for those with the most limited income and greatest housing. Diverse eligibility. Social housing is available not only to the very poor but also to students. I like that. Elderly, people in poor health, recovering from mental health issues, to prevent economic segregation. Yeah, that all sounds good. Right of occupancy homes. Finnish hybrid between renting and owning gives more people the opportunity to build equity. So you're provided, if you have low income or special needs, you can get a home. It's more affordable, and you could pay off or pay into that home, build equity, rather than your rent. And if you build enough equity, then like use that equity, actual, maybe own the home that eventually own the home that you're essentially renting. Because social housing development has continuous and stable thousands of built each year, also helps avoid the concentration of poverty. That's just like, this seems to be the model. Allow housing to exist in the free market. Those that cannot compete in the free market have a social housing system so that they don't end up on the streets. 2. Housing first and ending homelessness. A major pillar of Finnish housing policy is the housing first approach. People who are homeless are provided with permanent housing as the first step. Like that That's how you solve homelessness, right there. Or any additional services. This reflects the principle that having a home is a foundation for stability, equity, equality, and full participation in society. I mean, this is just true. Having a home is a foundation for stability, equality, and full participation in society. If you don't have a home, everything is so much harder. Like an actual stable resident. Although not perfect and still facing challenges, for example, the need for broader social support services, this strategy has contributed to one of the most significant long-term declines in homelessness in Europe, showing how housing policy can be a part of broader equality goals. Does it actually promote equality? Yes, in many ways. Access for vulnerable people. Housing is available to those who might otherwise be excluded from the private rental market. Lower rents and social mixing. Affordable housing helps keep rents in the private market more reasonable and promotes mixed communities instead of segregation. So this is one of the things that can be used in many areas that are not just housing. Like the government providing an affordable housing, it essentially creates like a floor. And so if there's a floor that people can fall down and then the floor, it prevents the private market from becoming unreasonable because people can just the floor created a floor for people that fall out of the private market, and therefore the private market can't just go insane. We've created essentially an anchor for, and I at least think you can do this in a lot of other sectors. Here in Canada, one of our big issues is cell phone. There's not a monopoly, but an oligopoly that basically works like a monopoly. That sets like phone prices, your carrier prices, and like I think we pay some of the highest cell phone bills anywhere in the world because of that. And if you create a floor or an anchor by creating like a government funded one, then all of a sudden oligopoly has to factor in that people can know, oh yeah, there's this other government plan that you can now use, and they have to innovate in order to get people not to use this, or perhaps you use something like low income or special needs to qualify. I don't know. I feel like this is very true, can be used in different places in society. The affordable housing helps keep rent in the private market more reasonable. Creating like an affordable phone plan can help keep the phone plans in the private market more reasonable. And you could do this in a lot of sectors. Social participation, stable housing enables people to participate in community life, work, and education. Like one of the things when you housing, you can enter into like a horrible spiral because you've lost your house. Oh, now you lose your job. Oh, now you can't be a part of the community. You can't participate in community things. You can't get education. You don't have a computer or a place that learn. Having no house completely destroys a person's economic output. Like, you can see people are trying to find like ways around it, like RVs. You see this in the US a lot, where RVs are parked in cities. People live out of RV. It's still a house. It's not like a stable house. Losing housing massively impacts the economic potential of it. There are limits and debates too. Some research argue that recent policy shifts have reduced the share of regulated social housing and increased reliance on market forces, which could reduce equality over time. Housing affordability still varies significantly by location, and not all low income guaranteed social housing away. This is a broader housing market issue, not unique to Finland. So while Finland actively housing policy to promote equality more than many countries do, it's not without challenges and debates, especially around how much the state should intervene versus letting the market decide. I mean, that's the complete debate, right? Right now, Canada, state doesn't intervene at all, and the market just decide. I think the state should be stepping in and making some decisions. I don't think full social housing is not how that socialism, I don't think that's how it should be run. There should be both a private market and an affordable social housing market. I believe that's going to be necessary. And how much they intervene, well, like, that's what people get to vote on, right? Right now, we don't get to vote on that in Canada because we don't have the social challenge, especially with how. But this is always going to be the question once you make it, right? Explores the national housing first strategy, how housing policy has shifted from temporary shelters. I don't think I'm gonna watch. Too long. Let's see. Can you find me a video that explains in detail but quickly how the Finnish social housing system works and how that affects the private market? Let's see if we can find something that's a little bit shorter. "10 minutes, much better." Condense and throw information.
So if you're living in Finland, you probably know that the most common types of housing are either renting or owning, so you bought your own place. And these are pretty easy to understand. When you're renting, you're paying someone in order to live in their place. You don't have to worry about their renovations, mortgage, but you also won't get to enjoy the possible price appreciation. And of course, there's always a risk that their
and
land
also don't build equity. Which is another important factor.
landlord will kick you out. And when you buy an apartment, instead of paying rent, you pay off the mortgage and increase your wealth, and without forgetting the price appreciation. Also, no one can really kick you out either because it's your place. However, you still carry the risk of price fluctuations and renovations, for example. How would it sound if we can combine
the whole price fluctuation? That hadn't been a problem till recently, right? The Canadian housing market only went up until it didn't. Now, when you buy a house, you're looking at the price depreciation. Got to consider, What's this going to be worth when I own?
Best of both worlds. Lifelong tenancy, no mortgages, no renovations, and get a small benefit of price appreciation. The truth is, it's actually possible. Introducing asumisoikeus asuminen, right of occupancy housing. Launched in Finland in 1991, right of occupancy combines the benefits of both rental and owner-occupied apartments. Asumisoikeusasunto in Finnish, or ASO in short. And the idea is
ASO. Okay, much better.
that the resident first pays 15% of the acquisition price of the apartment. This is called the right of occupancy payment, asumisoikeusmaksu.
The idea, the resident first pays 15%, so like a down payment. Price of the apartment. Okay.
In Finnish. And the rest of the purchase value has been financed with state subsidized Arava loans or interest subsidy loans.
Interest subsidy loan.
The residents gets the right of occupancy, asumisoikeus in Finnish, to that apartment by paying this, but the building owner still owns the apartment. The owners are non-profit organization.
Non-profit or how is this different from purchasing? One, you're purchasing from a non-profit. So does that mean there's no interest, or?
And note that the payment 15% share is from the acquisition price, not the market price. In other words, how much it cost to build that apartment in the first place. The Ministry of Environment reports that in Finland there are currently around 50,000 ASO homes with around 100,000 tenants. Around 45% of these ASO homes are in the capital area. So how does the system work? Let's look at the features more.
That's not that many. 1,000 residents. Finland, like, don't they have like 6 million people? Are in the capital. Well, I mean, I think in Finland, a significant part of the whole population lives by the capital. Finland population. Oh, this isn't working at all anymore. Select. There we go. Finland population. We got it. Why I was trying to grab my headset. 5.63 million. Capital city, nearly 30% of its residents. Metropolitan area. So 45% is overrepresented. If you're going to live somewhere, why not live in the capital?
5% of these ASO homes are in the capital area. So how does the system work? Let's look at the features more in detail. Residence charge. In addition to the ASO payment, the tenant pays a monthly fee called residence charge, käyttövastike in Finnish. And the owner uses this to cover the costs and the maintenance of the building. But here's the kicker.
This isn't the same thing. Yeah, this isn't the same thing as the learning about here. Is this the affordable social housing? I thought it would be more than 100,000.
By law, the käyttövastike has to be lower than the market rental prices in that area. So it's possible to save a little bit of money instead of renting in that same area. Lifelong right to live. The most remarkable feature of this system is that the owner cannot terminate the contract. In other words, you can live there indefinitely as long as you just pay the monthly payments and you keep the apartment in good shape. Compared to regular renting, the landlord can terminate your contract. But if you want to get rid of the place, if you don't want to live there, then you can give up the right as well. No worries about the renovations. The owner of the building is responsible for all the renovations and repairs in the building. So you don't have to worry at all about the renovation costs. No resale risk. So as mentioned, if you want to give up your right, you don't have to worry about selling the place because the owner does that for you. A financially reasonable option. As mentioned, the right of occupancy payment is 15% of the home's acquisition price, which means that you don't really need to get a huge loan compared to the case where you would buy a home. And if you want, you can also get a mortgage for an ASO apartment. In addition, you do not have to pay the transfer tax, varainsiirtovero, when you buy an ASO apartment. The transfer tax is either 2% for housing shares and 4% for houses. Refund of right of occupancy payment. So if you want to leave the place, you will actually get the original ASO payment back and it will be adjusted by the construction cost index. So in other words, you will get the original payment back plus some extra on top of it. I will give you an example later. Not redeemable. You can never buy the ASO apartment for you. You can only live there with the ASO right. So if you ever like...
So you don't ever get ownership, just pay the down payment and then you continue to make the payments. So this starts sounding like renting upfront cost, the lower payment. I mean, does
to
it
buy
come out
the ASO
cheaper
apartment,
overall?
it is not possible with the current law. Okay, so who can apply for these ASO apartments? There are 3 requirements for this. First of all, you need to have a Finnish personal identity code. If you're living in Finland, you will have this. You also need to pass the wealth limit requirement. I'm going to give you an example soon. And thirdly, you do not own a corresponding apartment in the application area and do not have sufficient funds to purchase such an apartment.
So these are cheaper apartments, essentially. So obviously you can't own an apartment or a house. Then there's no reason to have a cheap apartment. Past the wealth limit requirement, I'm guessing they say past, that means you're below a certain wealth limit. Because if you're above a certain wealth limit, they expect you to pay for your top one's easy if you live
So
there.
let's look at the wealth limit requirement more in detail.
Okay.
HASO is one of the organizations that provide ASO apartments in the Helsinki area, and they have a good example, so I'm going to quote it. So generally speaking, the wealth limit is 50% of the market price of an apartment corresponding to the apartment applied for. So what does this mean? Because we are looking at the market price, matters like the age of the building, size, and location play a big role. So let's look at the example from HASO. An applicant applied for a 2-room apartment of 53 square meters from HASO in September 2019. The apartment is an apartment building and it's located in the postal code area of 00560 in Toukola, where the average price of the old 2-room apartments is 5,651 euros per square meter, according to Statistics Finland. So in this case, the market price would be 53 square meters times the square meter price, and that equals to around 300,000 euros. And the 50% wealth limit would be around 150,000 euros. So in other words, if you wanted to buy that place, your combined wealth cannot exceed this number. So what is considered?
Okay, yeah, so cannot be above that specific.
Wealth. According to HASO again, the wealth specification concerns the wealth shown on the pre-completed tax form, such as property.
They did math, complicated math there, and I follow when they got into the specific square. So, like, isn't that like they were calculating it based off monthly? So does that mean your monthly income can't be above this limit?
These shares and debts. Information on personal bank accounts such as advanced savings and subsidy scheme account, that is the ASP account, are not needed. The pre-completed tax return must be attached to the wealth specification form. So in other words, stock portfolios, other apartments you may own, counted into this, and also debt reduce that. So assets minus debts is your wealth. And most importantly, there are only wealth limits, no income limits. So it doesn't matter how low or how much you make, anyone can apply as long as you just meet the criteria.
Yeah, I can't comment on the wealth limit because I don't understand. Basically, there's a limit to the wealth, total money you have, that can make you not be able to enter the system, which is what you need, right? Like, you can't make social housing, you give it to everyone, and everyone's going to use it. You need that limit. And honestly, you can control how many people are in social housing by increasing and decreasing.
I mentioned earlier. If you're interested in ASO apartments, how can you apply? Well, there's basically 5 steps you need to do. To get started, you need to apply for a queuing number from the housing office in the municipality you are looking for an apartment in. And the capital region has its own number for each place, but if you're looking for example, in Tampere, Turku, Oulu, they have their own queuing number in those cities. So you need to apply for each city where you're looking for an apartment. And there's an important update about this. I'm going to tell you about that soon. Step 2, when you get your queue number, you can actually start applying for ASO apartments online. For example, HASO and Asuntosäätiö are these organizations that offer these apartments, so you can go to their website, make an application to the apartments you're interested in, and that's it. You can also use traditional apartment websites.
Wait. So you can use this. You can use this on just general apartments, or these specifically. They're specific. Yeah, because they have to be owned by like the non-profit or
organizations that offer these apartments, so you can go to their website, make an application to the apartments you're interested in, and that's it. You can also use traditional apartment websites such as etuovi.com to look for ASO apartments. And then eventually they will start giving offers, and the offers are given with the lowest queue numbers. So depending on your queue number and the area, the waiting times can vary. For example, HASO says on their website, since some of the applicants have already applied for a number 20 years ago, it can take a long time to get a housing offer with a brand new number. Apartments near the center have been offered with numbers below 45,000, issued in the 1990s. So that's really pretty ridiculous. So you had to actually get the number in the 90s to get apartments from HASO. But that's just an extreme case. So for example, on the other end, if you go a little bit further away from the center, you can get an offer in just a couple of weeks or even days. And here's the important update for the queuing number system. So starting on the 1st of September 2023, the system will be
so some of them take a long time.
You can get an offer in just a couple of weeks or even days. And here's the important update for the queuing number system. So starting on the 1st of September 2023, the system will be renewed so that you will get the number from ARA, the Housing Finance and Development Center of Finland, instead of the municipality. Problem with the current system is that...
Okay, he's talking about how to use it. I don't really care about that. What's the how many people per capita are homeless in Canada compared to the US compared to Finland? How many people per capita? Per 1,000? They'll do that naturally, just per capita. Are homeless in Canada compared to... Let's see how effective this solution is. Bringing like a social system into housing. Just side-by-side comparison. Okay. US can okay. Homelessness per capita. US, United States. On a given night in January 2024, about 771,000 people were experiencing homelessness. It's roughly 23 people per 10,000, or about 0.23% of the population on Canada. Canada official homelessness indicators vary by reports and method, but some time estimate And shelter counts imply roughly 19 to 30 plus people per 10,000 people experience homelessness on a given night in many communities, similar to or slightly above the US range. Though measurement methods differ, Canadian count often focuses on emergency shelter stays and may undercount people outside of shelters. Okay, so I don't know how they have such specific information. 23 per 10,000, 19 to 30 per 10,000. And it's not good. Finland's homelessness counts are much lower. Official figures from 2021 show about 4,396 people experiencing homelessness in the entire country. That translates to less than 8 people per 10,000 people. I mean, that's better. These numbers mean Finland has one of the lowest per capita homelessness rates among high-income countries, largely attributed to its housing-first approach, strong social safety. Why don't we have a housing first that work? Canada and the US both have higher homelessness rates per capita. The US often reporting around 0.2% of the population a given night. Canadian estimates typically in a similar range, though methodologically differences make exact comparisons tricky. Caveat and comparison. Definition and method differ. Okay, it's just saying that how they count. Getting a count on homeless people is hard. Although they did it. I mean, a housing first strategy does seem to work. Just they have less. Why are we not pushing something? I hear Mark Carney is changing the housing system in Canada. Is he talking about a housing first strategy? Like, he didn't. I remember that when put his housing minister and he was like, we are not aiming to decrease the price of housing. But Mark Carney was also talking about building significant housing. Short answer, no, Mark Carney is not primarily talking about a housing first strategy like Finland's. His approach is quite different and focused. What is he actually proposing? Carney's housing policy is mainly about increasing supply and lowering costs, not restructuring the system around homelessness versus the poor. Massive push to build more housing. I mean, from my understanding, starts are down. That is not working. His government wants to dramatically increase construction. Creation of Build Canada Homes, a federal agency that acts like a developer to build housing faster and at scale. You need to give it control of districting. So much of the problem is at the municipal level, and the fact that this area isn't district as isn't have your residential, you have your commercial district codes, and so much of it is at that municipal level. You have to push new maps on them to let people build homes. Ernie, so how to build enough, like, if you get enough houses built, decrease private the private market price, get more people into homes. But as I've said, there are some individuals that will never be economically viable on their own. Some people that they'll never make enough money to do. If your solution is that these people get to live on the streets, then I disagree with your solution. I mean, I don't see why you can't build Canada's homes, also make a housing first strategy. You don't have to pick and have them both. Lowering costs and barriers, policy to cutting taxes / fees on new homes. That was minor. Investing tens of billions in infrastructure to enable housing construction. Make it cheaper and easier to build, but should bring. Like, this is all good. Supportive housing. Okay. There are elements that overlap with the housing for funding for supportive and additional housing. Efforts to reduce homelessness through affordable use. Again, some people are just not going to be able to afford your affordable units. But this is not the core strategy, it's one piece of a broader approach. The housing first approach, not really distinction. Finland. Give homeless people permanent housing first, then provide service. Canada. Build a lot more houses overall and improve affordability. Carney's model is closer to fix the housing shortage. Affordability improves, fewer people fall into homelessness. Yeah, but you're not helping them. Finland's model is end homelessness directly. Housing is a right. Systems adapt around that. Like, that's the approach right there. Like, if you provide home to the homeless, you can restore a certain degree of economic activity and potential. And then, I mean, have all their finances, right? So if they start making money, then they got to put a certain amount towards their home. Like this personality. Yeah. I've heard a lot of things about the Finnish housing market and how it's run. Do they provide homeless with homes? Is there no charge? How does that work? Because he was talking about. Give me the link to this here. This ASO system. What did he call it in the end?
Homes with around 100,000 tenants, not the market price. The Ministry of Environment reports that
ASO. There are a lot of things with. Is the ASO the only Let's see what they get. Finland's housing system can be confusing because it has multiple layers, not just ASO, and yes, Finland does provide housing for homeless people, but it's not free in the way people sometimes imagine. There's a clear break. Does Finland provide homeless people with homes? Yes. Finland is the world leader in housing first, which if someone is homeless, the main solution is give them a permanent home, usually a rental apartment or supported housing unit. Provide support service after they're housed. This is different from shelter-based systems like in Canada or the US. You should learn about the shelter-based system. Do homeless people pay rent? Is it free? Not free, but affordable. Here's how it works. Rent is charged, but heavily subsidized. Housing First units are typically owned by municipal housing companies, nonprofits, the state housing fund. Rents are cost-based, so they are much lower than market rent. So this is like what he was talking about with the ASO, where it's based off the price of the building that unit rather than the price of the market of, because the market price would have been higher. Tenants have very low income. Housing benefit covers part or most of the rent. So if you're low income, rent can be partly or mostly covered. Social assistance can cover the rest. Oh, yeah. They have a strong social system, right? So let's say you have no income. You get housing very low, social assistance can cover the rest. Okay. No one is evicted for being unable to pay due to poverty. I mean, that's just good. So the person pays rent on paper, but the state ensures the rent is actually affordable, so no one is forced onto the street. How do they still have homeless? This is key. Housing First is not free housing. It's stable, subsidized housing with built-in. Is SAO right of occupancy housing the main system? No, SAO is only one part of the Finnish system. Finland housing model has three major support pillars: social/ARA housing, 10 to 30% of all housing. This is the biggest non-market housing system. Characteristics: cost-based rents, no profit motive. So the rent is based off how much it costs to have the person living there. Owned by municipalities or nonprofits. Allocation based on income, housing situation, household size. Not just for the poor. Includes workers, students, families. Yeah, 10 to 13%. Helps keep entire neighborhoods affordable. Price anchor effect. That I like that. That's a great aspect. This is the backbone of Finland's housing stability. Pillar 2, SAO, right of occupancy. This is a weird one. You pay 15-20% upfront fee, pay a monthly maintenance fee similar to rent, don't own the home but have lifetime occupancy right. Get the upfront payment refunded when you move out. Oh, so you get that money back. Who uses it? Middle income people who cannot afford buying market homes. Families needing long-term stable housing. SAO is important, but not the main homelessness tool. Then the private market. Still the majority of housing in Finland, shaped by a large supply of non-profit rental housing, strong tenant protections. Eviction is difficult without cost. I mean, when you have the anchors in place, I don't think you need strong tenant protection, because that can 100% be misused. I've seen that misused. the whole point of I think of having ARA SAO housing is so that the private market can be the private market. Housing allowances for low-income renters, strict regulations preventing speculative landlord behavior, to prevent extreme price spikes. That's good. Housing First relies on permanent subsidized housing units, on staff is supporting housing buildings, social work, addiction support, mental health service. Zero requirements to be sober or ready before getting out. Once housed, people become far more stable and can get help. I mean, the obvious thing. Once housed, people become far more stable and can get help. Finland's long-term homelessness has fallen by over 80%, making it a successful model in the world. Common misconception explained gives home housing. Not exactly. Charge rent, but subsidies ensure no one is priced out. SAO is the homeless housing system. No, SAO regular household. Since homeless doesn't have a private housing market, do. The private sector competes with a strong non-profit alternative. Summary: how Finnish Housing Act works. We just went through all that. Finland's succeeds because all four coexist. The non-profit segments are large enough to stabilize the whole market. Housing first, permanent housing for homeless. But once they're in a home, then things get. This just looks like the way to do it. The system looks extremely effective. Why are there still homeless people in Finland? Because they still, Canada, US was 23 out of 10,000. Finland was like 8. Canada was similar to the US. Dramatic Mornay, but it has not eliminated entirely. There are several important reasons why some homeless still remain, even a very effective system. Finland eliminated rough sleeping, not all types of homelessness. Finland has nearly zero people sleeping on the streets, but it still has people temporarily staying with friends or family, sofa surfing, people in transitional units waiting for a permanent house, people who cycle in and out of institutions. You can try and get those people help, but there's some of those people, there's nothing you can do for them. At some point, you have to make the choice not to take drugs. Recently, people in the process of placed, a small number who were housing or need intensive care. So you'll see homelessness statistics, but almost none of those people are literally living outdoors. So they're 8 out of 10,000 are not living on the street. No one should sleep outside. I mean, we're rich enough. Canada is rich enough. No one should sleep outside. Our country is rich enough that no one should sleep outside, unless it is a choice. They achieved that, not total elimination of all. That's a good thing to achieve. Some people refuse housing. Yes, even in Finland, a very small number of people decline housing first apartments, cannot follow tendency. I mean, like these are the people that use drugs and like using drugs and are not going to give up their drugs for a house. These people you just kind of like either they'll die or you wait them out and they'll seek assistance at some point. Have the systems there to help them if they want to try. That's all you can really do. Prefer unlocked or informal living situations? Yeah. Severe addiction or mental illness. Sometimes you do have to put into an asylum. I know we've gotten rid of them. I think horrible place, but they served a purpose. The removal has left that purpose unserved. Need a solution to that. Okay. Won't lose housing for being addicted. I mean, even being addicted to drugs doesn't get you kicked out. But you can be evicted if your behavior puts staff or tenants at risk. Obvious. This tiny group is often counted as homeless. Complex mental health and addiction cases. Yeah. Bottlenecks in housing supplies in some cities. Like, the one guy was talking about that. Like, in some places you can't get it, and in other places you get it pretty quick. So maybe you gotta move where the house is. Not all homelessness is caused by youth leaving unstable family environment. Finland system catches most people quickly, but homelessness is a flow, not one-time problem. New cases keep appearing even as old cases solved. Yep. Numbers that do exist are very small by global standards. Finland's homelessness is now approximately 5 to 8 homeless per 10,000 residents, compared to 20 to 30 plus per 10,000 in Canada. Out of those, almost none are sleeping outside. Most are staying temporarily with others. Many are already in the process of getting housing. International definitions make the numbers look larger. Finland counts as homeless people who, so they have a different way of counting them. Even people who are staying with family, people in temporary supported residence, are in institutions that have no home to return to. Canada and the US usually do not count these people as homeless. So they solved the homelessness crisis so well, they had to expand who they counted as homeless to have in order to get a better number. If Finland used North American definition, its homeless count would be close to 0. Why the system is still effective despite some homelessness? Finland's approach is so successful because street homelessness is almost eliminated. Chronic homelessness is tiny. Most people are rehoused quickly. Homelessness rarely becomes a long-term condition. The goal is not 0 people in the system. It is 0 people abandoned by the system. Finland largely achieves that. Okay. I mean, I like their system. I believe it is a better system. Why are we not replicating it?